Hello chess fans, today I'm going to teach you a tricky and modern way to play against the King's Indian and Gruenfeld. So after d4, knight f6, here I'm going to recommend you play the move knight f3. And that's concurrent with our repertoire, is after d4 we're going to play e3 and b3, the Colle Zukertort system. So after g6, it's very hard to play the move b3 because it doesn't make any sense. Because after bishop g7, why is our bishop going on b2? Generally they can play this move c5 and knight e4 and then get tactics on the bishop. So here I recommend another tricky move, knight bdd2, and this is a very modern way of playing. So here black has a few responses: bishop g7, d5, and c5. d5 is the best, c5 is the second best, and bishop g7 I believe is an inaccuracy. d6 often transposes to bishop g7. So after bishop g7 we're going to play e4, and we're transposed to this perk where basically white has played an unideal setup. But an unideal setup is good against the perk because the perk is already an unideal setup from black, and here white still has a significant advantage. So after castles, I highly recommend you play this move c3. And the idea is after c5, we're just going to take it. The difference with bishop d3, which is what we want to play, is after c5, we can't take this pawn. We have to play this move d5, and the position is kind of more like something we don't really know. After c3 here, d5, e5, they have this move knight h5 with two threats to go bishop g4 and knight f4, and here black is considered to be equal, and black has done well in the database here, so don't want to recommend this. After c3, they'll play this move d6. After bishop d3, they can't play d5 in one go. So here we've pretty much got what we wanted, and we've avoided this c5, d5 line. So here they can play this move e5, and here's just a sample line. White just has a pretty free advantage here. Black has no counterplay, and white center is very solid. So here white wins around 60 to 40% of the games, and yeah, is doing amazing here in both the Elite Chess database and the Masters database. Black really doesn't have much play. Often King's Indian players kind of hate this position because white's position is just so uber solid. Okay, so after knight bd2, bishop g7 can not be considered that great of a move. So next let's look at c5. After c5, we have to justify this knight being here. If we go e3 after takes, the knight makes no sense here because it blocks the bishop. So we have to take this, and the idea is to go for this move knight b3. So here, black has two options. Either allow knight b3 with bishop g7, or don't allow knight b3 with queen a5. And bishop g7 is by far a much less popular move. If bishop g7, here you can go for this move knight b3 to defend the pawn. That was our whole idea. And after knight a6, here I prepared this novelty, which is the move e4. If takes, you have bishop takes here, and after takes, queen d5 with this fork. This was what a lot of people in Blitz will fall for, but most people probably won't play that. After takes, you have this move e5, and after here, bishop c4. The theory continues here. I highly recommend looking at this by yourself, but basically know that white has a significant advantage here. Black's pieces are kind of tripping on each other. As you can see, these knights kind of need each other. If you somehow were able to move this knight away and play like b4, then this knight would move and you'd lose this knight. So yeah, it's generally not considered that good for black. So that's why bishop g7 is by far a much less common move. So here queen a5 will probably be played. Here you go a3. Idea is to go b4. If they go bishop g7, b4, and white is completely winning, we're just up a pawn. So here they take here, and after b4, queen c7 or queen c3 doesn't really matter. If queen c3, rook b1, and we go here next, we gain a free tempo. So most people will go queen c7, and after bishop b2, you might say, okay, let's take stock of the position. Who's better and why? White's clearly better. And why would I say that? Because it seems black's better because they have no c pawn, we have no d pawn, and c pawns are less valuable than d pawns. Well, first off, white's up on development. Here, as you can see, white has 3 pieces developed, black has 1 piece developed, the knight, and they're about to get a second piece. And if we look at how a game might continue, something like this is the sort of setup that might be taken. Either we can go queen c2 and castle queenside and push the h pawn to a4, or we can take a more passive approach and go for what I've arrowed out here, which is simply playing against this dark squared bishop. This dark squared bishop has no good home, so we're just going to play h3, bishop e2, and where does the dark squared bishop go? They're going to have to play with this bad piece. So basically, white has a nice position there. So c5 is not considered that great. Now let's look at the best move, d5. And I believe your opponent is seeing this for the first time, that they won't really know what to do. So the best move here is c4. And I'm going to teach you how to play that. But if you're trying to look for a simple approach, just play b3, bishop b2, e3, c4. And we're simply doing something like our old Colle Zukertort system. Very flexible, very simple position, and still gives white the advantage. But if you're looking to get advantage here, go for this move c4. Here, black has another 4 options. They can go bishop g7, they can go c6, they can go c5, and they can go d takes c4. So just take a second. Which one of these do you think is the best option? So now if you're stuck with your option, I'll tell you the best option. The best option is c5. The second best option is c6. And both d takes and c4 and bishop g7 can be considered mistakes. And surprisingly, bishop g7 is the most common move. Here we're going to go for c takes d4. They can take with two different ways here. 99% of your opponents are going to take with the knight. And after e4, knight b6, knight b3, we have the dream position of the Gruenfeld. We've stopped this c5 break, which is the #1 break in the Gruenfeld. And they can't get it off. And the second thing is, we have this nice center and we haven't traded any pieces. In the regular Gruenfeld, after knight takes d4, they can trade this knight on c3. If anyone is curious what that looks like, for example, after something like c4, bishop g7, knight c3, something like this, after e4, knight takes e3, they've managed to trade off a piece, which is good for them because they have less space. So trading off a piece is very helpful. In the position now, after d5, c4, bishop g7, bishop takes, they weren't able to trade off a piece, and they can't play this c5 move. So here white would be significantly better. Now here, a lot of people are worried about this bishop g4 move here, but after bishop e3, takes, even though we have deviled pawns, the position is very nice. We can go for the plan of h4, h5, create weaknesses, and if they play h5 themselves, we can go for something like here. With bishop h3, position is very pleasant. They have no counterplay with c5, and what is black really supposed to do? This position is around plus 1.5 to plus 2. And I just realized I didn't have the evaluation bar on. So after c takes here, they should really go for this move, queen takes. And now here, I'm going to recommend you two moves. Now, if you just want to play simple, e3, c5, bishop c4, queen d8, we're up a pawn. Simple position, plus 0.2. White's slightly better, we're up a pawn. We're probably going to lose the pawn, but we're going to get at least a lot of counterplay for it. So, instead of that, the best move here, in my opinion, is this move e4. Now, none of your opponents are going to know what to do here, and all of your opponents are going to blunder here, but the position with absolute perfect engine play is still good for black. So after knight takes e4, bishop c4 is our idea, attacking the queen. Now what happens if queen a5? This move is what was played against me in an online game. After b4, queen takes b4, queen b1, here, and here. Slow that down if you didn't get any of the moves. The queen is trapped. But what if the queen just moves off here? We take the knight. And that was the whole idea of queen a5. The idea of queen a5 was to pin the knight, but here we're winning the knight by force. So they can't go there. What if they go queen f5, bishop d3? Thank you for your nice. Merci beaucoup. So here they have to go for the move queen c6. And after d5, they play this move queen c5, which threatens the pawn on f2. And now here, we have to attack the knight. If we take the knight, they take our bishop. So let's think about how we can attack this knight. So we can't obviously attack it straight up, because then, okay, they just get the knight out of the way. So let's check here, defending our bishop. So if they do any of this moves, we can just take the knight. So a lot of opponents will probably blunder that, play bishop d7. After here, you're up a piece, because after, for example, if bishop d7 takes, you're up a piece. A lot of opponents will blunder that. So here the only move is b5. And here you can play sort of a safe approach, which is queen takes b5, c6, queen takes c5, takes, and like takes here. And okay, I mean, like, okay, sorry, knight b3 in this position, takes, and yeah, okay, you're slightly worse or better here because after bishop a6 you can't castle. Okay, so you should take a takes. You're slightly worse here, safe approach. But why not just keep more tricky? Bishop takes b5, attacking the knight. So here, okay, they can't go for here because we take and then take the knight. So they have to go for c6. And here you can go for knight takes, and after takes, you're in a worse endgame. So we want to keep it as tricky as possible. So here, take here. Blundering f2, blundering. Keep in mind it's completely equal here. After queen takes e2, king d1, think about a move for black. Okay, my knight's hanging, right? So if I ignore that, if I castle or something, I lose the knight. So let's think of things I can do. How about we move our knight back? c7 takes here. Thank you for the free rook. That's another blunder they can make. Okay, I have to get away with the knight. Let's get the knight away with tempo. Take here. If we take with the bishop, they can take here with the fork, so we don't want to do that. So knight takes. C7 check first, and after here, knight takes. Now, okay, what are they supposed to do? Let's say I castle. Okay, thank you very much for this again. Oh, sorry, here you can just win the knight. So they can't castle. So let's say they go, I don't know, what if they take here? Okay, we win again. So what other move do they have? Let's say a6, they try to kick you away. Bishop c6. And now guess what the best move here is? It's castles. What are your opponents going to play that? None of them. All of them are going to play here and just blunder this. Checkmate. So yeah, definitely a very tricky line here. And if you're wondering what the best response for black is to go knight c5. And after this move, queen a3. Idea is to remove the queen like this and then take the knight. Here they can play this move, knight e6. Covering c7. After c7, knight d7. Bishop c6, knight takes c7, takes. Here you would be losing, so instead you should go rook e1. Yeah, okay, it doesn't really make any sense. But I highly recommend looking at this line yourself, and it's extremely tricky. I think white is coming out with an equal endgame at the end, but only white can really push. So yeah, just play e3 if you want something solid, and play e4 if you want to have fun. So bishop e7 is not a great move in conclusion. So next, let's look at another bad move, d takes e4. This one is extremely easy to explain. e4, we have a dream Gruenfeld again. This knight is blocking the bishop. We're going to take this pawn. We control the whole center. It's so bad for black. I have no idea why this is played. So next, let's look at a pretty reasonable move, c6. And here you can go e3, b3, and get a sort of reasonable position. But instead of that, let's go e3, and after bishop g7, go for b4. They no longer can play e6 and sort of punish you for this, so might as well do it. If a5, you can always do something like this. And this position is generally good for us. Look at the arrows below. Their fianchetto bishop is pretty terrible because it's never going to be open because they can't play c4 to open the position. And yeah, this position is like a dream Catalan for black. So basically, if white was playing a Catalan, if black was playing the white pieces of a Catalan, black has the dream position of the Catalan. Very hard to explain, but just know that against a fianchettoed bishop, if they don't have a c pawn and there's this very solid d pawn here, it's a very terrible position. So here, black is doing really badly. So they shouldn't really go a5, should go castles, and here you can look at by the arrows, these are all playable moves that all have around 40% win rate for white. And yeah, I just think that this position is very easy to play, and black has pretty much no counterplay. If I give black a plan, what's black's plan? Maybe to get a knight to e4, but yeah, simply expand on the queen side, get the bishop to a3, get the pawns up, and bring the rook to the c file and try to dominate with your pieces. All your pieces are forced towards this way. They're not going to get any sort of kingside attack. So yeah, that's why I recommend b4. So that's c6, generally a pleasant position. Now let's look at the best move, c5. And now to look at this best move, we have to look at a game by Wesley So and Shakhriyar. So Wesley So tried to play this as white. So after g6, knight b2, here c4, c5, and here he played d takes was the only move. Notice that if they play takes here is considered to be bad for white. After check, queen d7, takes. Black is slightly better here because g6 is a lot more useful a move than knight b2. Knight really wants to be on c3. So black would be better there. So don't do that. Instead of that, do here, like what Wesley So did. And after bishop g7, I would love to say Wesley So won this game. Unfortunately, he drew the game, and he did not play the opening particularly well, considering it was a rapid game, and probably he was just playing this for fun. I'm pretty sure this game didn't matter for his standings. So here he played c takes e4, which is a blunder. You should play e3. And now here in the only game in the database, queen a5 was played, and after a3, this type of position, we sort of get an exact transposition to a previous line with c5, and this is considered not to be very good for white. So that was played by a GM, actually, at 2400. And here, instead of that, they should castle. And for example, in this position after b4, I think the position is really hard for both sides, but white is seemingly getting a slightly better position here. It's very complicated though. Knight c6 might be used to stop this. Again, after something like bishop e2, knight b3, something like that. White probably holds on to this pawn for the time being, but their bishop is terrible, and yeah, it's hard to say who's better here. So yeah, generally do that, but let's see how the game went. So here black was much better because they have better development. Their rook is going to come to d8, their castle, their king, and white's pieces are tripping over each other. So castles, knight c6, h3, and we'll just see how you play pretty much a worse position, queen e2. A lot of players here would probably crumble under the pressure Shakhriyar is giving. So here, Shakhriyar decides to give up the bishop pair, which I don't know about that decision. The engine says here, but okay, who am I to criticize the decision considering I'm looking at the engine? So after takes, knight h5. I'm not going to go over this game too in depth because it's not the real focus of this video, but basically, White was able to hold the draw at some point by playing pretty nice defense. So yeah. That was what happened in this game. The best approach is to take here and go e3 and hope you get up a pawn. So that's basically the repertoire I'm going to recommend. If you have any questions or comments to make, please remember to let me know down below. And I'll try to do my best to respond to any of them. But I believe this is a highly tricky variation. And also, I wanted to add actually one thing. After d5, you don't have to play this move c4, and you don't have to play this move b3. Here you in fact have also the move b4, which is another pretty nice idea. After here, you can now go for this move e3, and after castles here, I guess you kind of hope, you're like, please play bishop c6 so we transpose into the other line. But here, unfortunately, they probably have like the move b6. b6, no, maybe bishop f5. Bishop a5 is also another way to play. So yeah, I guess if you want a simpler approach, you can also go for this move. b4, I think it also gives white a significant advantage. So yeah, that's the end of today's video, guys. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Again, I already asked you to ask any questions down below. I believe this is a very tricky opening, and it's definitely something that's highly underrated. So with that all said and done, I'll see you guys in the next video, where hopefully I'll either be trying this out or I will be discussing another line in these d4 positions. See you guys in the next one.